Hi, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Drew. Sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. 8 years ago, I walked away from a woman I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with. Her name was Michaela. At one point, I thought I knew her better than anyone else. I had proposed. She said yes. We were picking wedding dates, talking about kids, and figuring out where to settle. I truly believed we were on the same page. But I was wrong. When I left, I made a clean break. And in all those 8 solid years, we never crossed paths. It was like we existed in 2 completely different worlds after the breakup. I don't know if that was luck or just the universe keeping us apart, but either way, I thought that chapter was closed for good. But I was wrong. A close friend of mine was celebrating his marriage anniversary. He invited a small group of us who had been there through different chapters of his story. Old college friends, people from his first job, a few neighbors from back in the day. I hadn't seen some of these faces in years, and honestly, I was looking forward to it. I figured it'd be a good chance to reconnect, to catch up without the usual noise of big crowds or social pressure. The venue was a quiet, modest hall tucked behind a cafe with warm lighting. I remember standing by the table where they laid out finger foods and sipping on a ginger ale while chatting with my friend's cousin about old times. That's when I saw my ex-fiancée, Michaela. For a second, it was like time folded in on itself. I didn't move or say anything. My brain tried to catch up with the moment because this wasn't someone I ever expected to see again. I had mentally prepared myself to see some people from the past, but not her. Not the woman who shattered 2 parts of my life in one blow, my relationship and my career. I hadn't heard her name in years. I didn't know what to feel. Shock? Anger? Curiosity? All I know is my stomach dropped and everything else in the room faded into background noise. She hadn't seen me yet. And in those few seconds before she did, my mind started racing. Was this going to be civil or messy? I won't lie. I wanted to leave before she could get close. But I didn't. I stayed and watched the past walk into the present. When I talk about Michaela, I'm not just talking about an ex. I'm talking about someone who, for a long time, felt like home. Before we ever dated, we were friends and talked about everything we each wanted someday. And somehow, every conversation just fit, like puzzle pieces falling into place. By the time we actually got together, it already felt like we were halfway through a relationship. We understood each other without needing to explain too much. I could tell her things I couldn't tell anyone else. And back then, I truly believed that kind of connection meant we were meant to last. I was 22 when I got my first job in corporate America. I landed a job at a tech company that was still growing fast. It wasn't glamorous, but I was proud. My boss at the time wasn't just any businessman. He was someone I genuinely looked up to. He'd built that company from scratch, through failure after failure, and still came out on top. I respected him deeply. He wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, but you could feel the weight of his presence when he walked into a room. The way he carried himself made you want to earn his respect, not just ask for it. I was eager. I felt like I was finally stepping into adulthood. I worked hard, stayed late, took notes, asked questions nobody else was asking, and paid attention to everything he said, even the small throwaway lines during meetings. I didn't just want to be another employee. I wanted to be the kind of person he saw potential in. Over time, he noticed. He started calling me into his office more often, not just for work stuff, but to talk. Sometimes about business, sometimes about life. He'd share things about his early struggles, how he almost gave up more than once, how he dealt with betrayal, how he learned to trust his gut. I soaked all of it in. That relationship became important to me, not just professionally, but personally. I began to see him as a mentor, someone who believed in me when I still wasn't sure I deserved it. I didn't grow up with a strong male figure, so having a man like that in my corner meant something. It felt like the kind of friendship that would last a lifetime. He didn't just give advice. He opened doors, guided me through hard decisions, and made me feel like I was being groomed for something greater. I trusted him, fully, admired him like a son would admire a father. I never imagined that trust would be the same thing that would shatter me later. After I got my first promotion, I was pumped. It was a big deal for me, not just because it meant more responsibility or a better paycheck, but because it felt like proof that all those late nights and sacrifices were finally adding up to something. Everything seemed to be lining up perfectly. My career was moving forward, and I was about to take the next big step in my personal life. I was planning to propose to Michaela. We'd been together 4 years at that point, and I genuinely believed we were building a life together. So, in my excitement, I went to the one person I looked up to the most professionally, my boss. Since I respected him deeply, saw him as a mentor, and have him often gave me advice like a big brother would, I decided to tell him. When I told him I was thinking of marrying Michaela, he smiled, clapped me on the back, and said I was making a solid choice. He even offered to help me plan something special for the proposal, if I needed it. What I didn't know was that this conversation would become one of the biggest regrets of my life. About a month after that, everything fell apart. It was a regular Wednesday night. Most people had gone home already, but I was still in the office, double-checking a quarterly report before it went to a client. I found a small error in one of the financials and figured I should run it by my boss before fixing it. His light was on, so I assumed he was finishing up work too. I didn't knock, never needed to when official hours ended. That's how familiar we were. But the second I opened that door, my entire world turned inside out. There they were, Michaela and my boss, together on the couch in his office, hands where they shouldn't be. Her blouse was halfway unbuttoned. His wedding ring was still on his finger. For a few seconds, no one said anything. It was like time froze. I just stood there, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. Michaela scrambled up, fixing her clothes, her face pale. My boss was adjusting his tie like he'd been caught in a meeting that went a little long. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I turned around and walked straight out. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grab my keys. Looking back, I realized I had introduced them once, just once. Michaela had stopped by the office to drop off lunch for me on that day, and I'd introduced her quickly, not thinking anything of it. I was proud to show her off. Never in my wildest thoughts did I imagine that moment would plant a seed in the mind of someone I trusted. That he'd see the woman I loved as someone he could take. That she'd let him. I went home and sat in the dark for hours. I couldn't cry or sleep. I just sat there, letting the weight of it all settle. That the woman I was going to marry was having some sort of an affair with my boss. One that had been going on right under my nose. By morning, I already knew what I had to do. First thing, I ended things with Michaela. I told her I knew, and I was done. She tried to explain, of course. Tried to say it didn't mean anything. But to me, it meant everything. It meant I'd been lied to by the person I planned to spend my life with. It meant I'd trusted someone who was looking me in the face while lying through her teeth. And I couldn't stomach that. After that, I wrote a resignation letter, just one line. I won't work under someone I can't respect. I didn't even wait to see his reaction. I handed it in, packed my things, and left the office without saying a word to anyone. That same day, I packed up my apartment. By nightfall, I was out of the city. Gone. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I didn't answer any calls. I just disappeared. A few months later, a former coworker reached out. He was someone I trusted, so I picked up his call. While we spoke, he told me that the affair wasn't new. It had been going on for a while. People had suspected, whispered, but no one said a word to me. Everyone I worked with had watched me walk around clueless. It was humiliating, like I'd been the punchline in some long-running office joke. He added that he is sorry for not telling me earlier, as he feared what the outcome would be for him if it blew open. I spent the next few years rebuilding my life from the ground up in a different city, building a different circle. And slowly, things got better. I focused on work. I focused on healing. I wasn't in a rush to fall in love again. I didn't trust myself to. But eventually I met someone. 3 years after walking away from everything, I got married. Not to the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, but to the one who made me feel safe enough to try again. It felt like a kind of redemption. Not for the past, but for myself. like I had finally stepped out of that shadow and started living again. That had been my life before I was invited to this event. Michaela currently looks older, but is still beautiful after 8 years apart. She saw me a few moments later. I could tell by the way her smile shifted slightly, became a little more hesitant. But still, she walked over. It felt like she had practiced this moment in her head before it ever happened. She said my name softly, like we had only spoken yesterday. Drew, wow, it's been forever. I nodded. Said, yeah, it has. My voice came out calm, maybe even colder than I meant, but I wasn't trying to be harsh. I just didn't know how to warm up to someone who once burned me so completely. She told me she was married now. I didn't ask questions. I just said, that's good. I'm glad. And I meant it. Then she paused, looked down for a second, then back up at me with eyes that weren't as steady. She said she needed to say something, that she owed me an apology, even if it was too late. She admitted she made the wrong choice back then, that she'd been chasing something selfish, something that looked powerful in the moment. My boss, the status, the thrill. She said she didn't think about what it meant to lose me. Didn't realize what she had until I walked away and never looked back. And then she told me something I hadn't known. That was just a few weeks after I left. Everything fell apart on her end, too. The boss's wife found out, and it all blew up. He dropped her quickly. She said she was left alone with everything she'd broken and nowhere to go with it. Said she had taken me for granted, thinking I'd always be there, always understanding, always forgiving. But I wasn't. Not after that. I stood there, letting her speak and get it all out. And when she was done, I nodded. Quietly. Told her, thanks for saying that. I didn't have anything else to offer. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't open either. I had healed in a way that didn't need answers or closure from her. So I excused myself. Said I needed to check on something inside, and I left her standing there and walked away. The morning after the event, I woke up to a text from Michaela. I didn't know it was her at first, but after I went through what the text said, it was easy to guess. I just stared at it for a little bit more. It felt strange. After all that time and everything that had happened, I didn't expect to hear from her again, especially not so soon. She said something like, "Hey, I noticed you left early last night. I was hoping we could talk more. Maybe meet up sometime." Just reading it made me pause. It was a message that looked harmless on the surface, but it carried weight. It was like she was testing the waters, seeing how far she could go. I sat with it for a bit, thought about how easily something like that could spiral. I knew what she was doing, even if she wasn't saying it directly. She was trying to reopen a door that I'd closed a long time ago. And, I'll be honest, part of me, the very human part, did feel something. Not because I wanted her back, but because old feelings don't just evaporate. They're like ashes. You can still feel the heat if you touch the wrong part. But I've lived enough life to know that revisiting the past for comfort only leads to pain. So I replied, keeping it respectful but clear. I told her, "I appreciate your apology from last night. It took something for you to say that. But I'm not interested in meeting up or continuing any more conversations. Let's leave it at that." That should have been the end. It should have been the point where two adults nod and walk away. But then she replied again. And this time, it wasn't subtle. She wrote, "I know you're married now, but I'd do anything to take that spot back." That was her exact wording. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't misreading. The same woman who broke me, who helped unravel my life at a critical point, was now saying she'd gladly step back in, as if she had a right to just claim that space again. I simply replied, "You made your choice. I've moved on. You should focus on your husband, not mine." Then I blocked her number. I needed to protect the life I've built since her. My wife, my peace, my growth, none of it deserves to be disturbed by someone who once threw it all away for a selfish decision. Some doors need to stay closed, not because we hate who's on the other side, but because we love who we've become without them. You know, it's strange how something that happened 8 years ago can still sit with you like it just happened yesterday. After running into Michaela again, I kept thinking about it. It reminded me just how far I've come since that whole mess. It's like my mind needed that moment to really close the door for good. Seeing her again stirred up memories. And the biggest thing I realized is this. Keeping her out of my life was the best decision I ever made. Some people carry chaos like perfume. You may get used to the scent, even find it intoxicating for a while, but it still stains your clothes, your space, your peace. I don't want that anywhere near my life now. She apologized, yeah. Said she regretted cheating. Said she took me for granted. But then she went a step further. Started talking like maybe there was still a chance for something. That's when it hit me. She hasn't changed. She's married. Yet she was standing there, trying to open an old door that should have stayed locked. That told me everything I needed to know. She still doesn't understand the consequences. Still doesn't respect boundaries, hers or anyone else's. I told her I appreciated the apology. That's it. And honestly, I felt this huge wave of relief wash over me. Relief that I wasn't the man standing beside her now. Relief that I wasn't the one waking up next to someone who still doesn't know how to be loyal, not just to others, but to herself. Am I happy it ended the way it did? I don't know. That part's still murky. Part of me wonders what life would have looked like if she hadn't betrayed me. But then I look at the life I have now, peaceful, honest, real, and I know I wouldn't trade it for anything. That tells me everything I need to know. So, no, there's no place for her in my world anymore. No friendship. No keeping in touch. No what if. I walked away 8 years ago, and after seeing her again, I'm walking away all over again, just quieter this time, and with a much lighter heart. That's the thing about healing. It doesn't always look like fireworks or grand moments. Sometimes it's just the quiet certainty that you're better off without the person who broke you. And for the first time in a long time, I'm really okay.